Sziasztok, én Csepregi Dávid vagyok.
Én pedig Schulz Nóra, és ez itt a Belépési küszöb.
Ez egy rövid felhívás az epizódunk elején, magyarul, ugyanis ezt a beszélgetést most angolul fogjuk közölni, 2 olyan vendéggel, akik részt vettek a lengyel választási kampányban. A beszélgetés során arra vagyunk kíváncsiak, hogy milyen volt ez belülről. Ugye talán sokan tudjátok, hogy ellenzéki győzelemmel zárult az idei parlamenti választás Lengyelországban, mi pedig a Razem egyik képviselőjelöltjével és a helyi SUD nevű mozgalom 2 vezetőjével beszélgetünk. Tartsatok velünk!
Az az ember, aki azt mondja, hogy nincs különbség bal és jobb oldal között, az jobboldali.
Mi nem az ellenzék, hanem az ellenzék lelkiismerete szeretnék lenni.
Megint úgy van, hogy olyan ember, aki nem cselekszik, állhat azon az állásponton, hogy az egész társadalom egy elvetendő valami.
Amikor a kapitalizmus világméretű bukására én sem látok rövid távol kilátást.
Miért tetszik lábjegyzetelni a saját életét? Miért nem tetszik átélni? Miért csak reflektál?
So hi everyone, this is our first ever English language podcast episode. My name is Nora.
And my name is David.
And we run a lefty politics podcast in Hungary by the name Belépési küszöb. And in this episode, we are going to share some conversations that we've had with people from the Polish left after the October 15 elections, which resulted in a really huge and somewhat surprising win for the democratic opposition in Poland. And as the situations in Hungary and Poland are somewhat similar, we were really curious about their experiences and also wanted to learn about how a right-wing, seemingly hegemonic regime could be overcome.
We on the progressive left are quite prone to be pessimistic as we face the challenges of our time. This pessimism is not unfounded, and it's not hard to find examples to justify it. However, 2023 has not been short of the opposite either. In the Spanish elections this summer, the left managed to repel the post-fascist Vox, and a few weeks ago the Latvian Progressivi was able to get representation in the governing coalition as the strongest new left party in the Baltics. In this episode we want to explore one such ray of hope as well. As Nora mentions, this is exactly the reason we want to talk about the Polish election. We are trying to understand the background of Poland's success from the perspective of electoral politics and also the activist scene. We will be joined by Zofia Malisz from the left-wing party Razem and Dominika Lasota and Wiktoria Jędroszkowiak from the local SUD movement. And we really encourage every listener to stay with us until the second part of the episode as well, because Dominika and Wiktoria have a really moving story to tell for Hungarian listeners.
So now let's turn to our first conversation with Zofia.
I'm glad to be here with you. My name is Zofia Malisz, and I am a member of the Polish left party Razem since 2016. I'm mostly active in Razem's international office, where I work developing international relations with other parties, also in Hungary. But I also have been involved in the last electoral campaign, building the party's digital, foreign and science policy. And I was also a candidate on the Warsaw ballot. I have not entered the Sejm, which is the Polish parliament, but in general, we have been quite successful at Razem this time around because we have increased the number of parliamentarians in the Polish Sejm and Senate. So we used to have 6 people who were re-elected this time. So this is the first re-election of Razem candidates. And we have now 2 additional female senators, Magdalena Biejat, who is also our co-leader, and Anka Górska, who happens to be also the coordinator of the international office. and one more MP in the lower chamber, in the same Joanna Wicha, who is a nurse. And after a very, very exciting thriller counting votes situation at the end of the election, and kind of it wasn't certain for a while whether Joanna gets into the Sejm. So we really waited until the last votes were counted, and believe it or not, but she entered the parliament, beating another candidate by 60 votes. So this gives you I can tell you a little bit more about what her campaign was like, but this gives you an idea that that when people say every vote counts, it really does.
So first we wanted to understand more the local political context that the opposition faced before deciding on their electoral strategy. Of course, most of the listeners know that the Hungarian political context for the opposition before the 2022 elections was somewhat similar to the Polish context and the Polish atmosphere. There was a dominant party in Hungary, Orbán Viktor's Fidesz, and in Poland, Jarosław Kaczyński's PiS, Law and Justice Party. We were curious whether the example of the Hungarian opposition in uniting before the 2022 elections was in any way a topic in the discourse leading up to the Polish elections this year. Of course, there are contextual differences when it comes to electoral systems, but anyway, let's hear Zofia's answer.
It was definitely and very strongly on the mind of the current, main leader of the opposition, which is Donald Tusk, who will very likely become prime minister now until the end of the year. So his party, Koalicja Obywatelska, they were pushing for the last years leading to the 23 election for a common list. And we were from the very beginning, both at Lewica and within Razem, against this idea, also using actually the Hungarian example that, in a similar situation and against a similar political force that uses this type of Orbanite tactics, this just hasn't worked in Hungary. But there was an incredible amount of pressure from Koalicja, from the Liberals, which is the largest party on the opposition, to prepare a common ballot also for the lower chamber. Because right now, what actually worked, so this is a slightly mixed bag situation regarding that common ballot. This is the second parliamentary election in which the higher chamber, which is the Polish Senate, actually does have a united ballot where all opposition parties agree to put out a challenger to a PiS, which is the former governing Kaczyński party. And that works, but this works because the electoral system for the higher chamber is slightly different. So it's not as proportional, it's more similar to the kind of first past the post system. So very often when the Liberals asked me, and they did also during this campaign, why we were against actually having the common ballot, I reply, well, we do have a common ballot where it makes sense. So we thought it would be better to run separately rather than on one united list, because we were sure that we will be able to address the respective electorates much better in the campaign, and this is what happened. And also, I think that the sum of the parts in this particular case had an additional value actually when you have a look at the actual result. And I also think that if we had run on one ballot, it would have been much easier for Kaczyński to attack us, because then we would have probably one face and one party fronting this united list. And so there are quite a few strategic and campaign-related disadvantages that affect this type of electoral strategy. And also, I think, really, from the point of view of the electoral system in Poland, it makes much more sense to run separately in the lower chamber elections. What is really important, and what we were also fighting for on the democratic opposition, is that indeed all the parts of the sum of the democratic sum that eventually won actually entered the parliament, of course, right? And there were also problems and a big challenge regarding that ultra-right libertarian Konfederacja party, which we also had to beat together with PiS, actually. So PiS, or Zjednoczona Prawica, which is the United Right, was not the only force that we had to win against. And so this was not an easy campaign.
So the democratic opposition in Poland achieved a great success this fall, and one of the reasons behind this was the amazing turnout at the elections. This meant that in Warsaw, more than 85% of people turned up at the polling stations, and more than 75% of women in Poland decided to vote. We were curious what was, in Zofia's opinion, the reason behind this huge, huge turnout. And what she highlighted, as you will hear in a second, is that people were really fed up with the polarization that PiS was escalating. And we were very happy to hear, actually, about how some of the methods that were used in the Hungarian elections turned out to be not so successful in the Polish case.
What very many people noticed is that the turnout was an absolute record. I have never seen anything like this in my life. Even the 1989 elections were not, the people did not come out to vote such numbers as this time. So usually a higher turnout is positive for the government, but when it is this high, then of course it is also a statement of the will to change, So really, really a lot of women that have not voted before or have not voted for a long time have come out to give their say. We always run a turnout campaign every time, but I think this time the turnout is so very high. I don't think this is a result of a turnout campaign of any sort, right? To me, it's a result of the fact that people are exhausted with the government. They are tired with them, tired of the polarized Polish politics. The result of Trzecia Droga is much higher than actually expected. They were campaigning on this idea of no more quarrel, no more arguing. We need to start talking to each other and things like that. I do not want to overstate the importance of such an emotion, but I know that there is a big, big portion of the Polish society that found this really appealing. And actually, during the campaign, there was something of an unspoken deal between the democratic opposition parties not to attack each other in some major way, because all sorts of polls and questionnaires or whatever studies that we have done on every level, from a political party to an independent polling institution, indicated that people want at least the parties on the democratic opposition to talk to each other, right? So we were against the common ballot, but people were definitely tired of this polarizing political scene in Poland. And as I hear, Zjednoczona Prawica, which is Kaczyński's side, was actually advised there are some reports that there were Hungarian spin doctors, Orbán spin doctors, incredible reports that they were helping in this campaign, and unfortunately for them, for the right, they advised them to basically escalate on the polarizing and try again with the anti-migration question and try and basically lead the type of a hatred-based campaign that PiS is very comfortable with. People have been, in general, in Poland, tired in the last years of these escalating emotions. And actually, it was also a bit of a problem for the democratic side because there were so many mass protests, particularly the one regarding the ban on abortion that brought so many people onto the streets, that there was a general feeling of tiredness with this highly emotional response to politics. So I think all in all, what was really, really important for the people to come out is that there was a wish for a genuine change, and also a change in tone of the Polish politics, from this escalatory, polarizing to more compromises and being more friendly with each other. So that was a big part of it. A huge part of it is, of course, for the women in Poland to basically make a stand and show our power and show what we want. And some people have also reacted to the attempt by PiS to actually further rig the turnout to their favor, because they also organized a referendum that took place consecutively with the election. And this referendum had some very ridiculous questions that were biased and counterfactual regarding also migration and things like that. So a lot of people that were voters of the opposition, they read this immediately, quite rightly, as a means to mobilize PiS's base and demotivate the opposition side. So that was an additional incentive to actually come in great numbers to the ballot booth. The Hungarian spin doctors failed. The Orbán-like referendum failed. It actually, both of those techniques borrowed from Hungarian politics, I think contributed to the high turnout and to the victory of the opposition, unfortunately for Jarosław Kaczyński.
So one of the reasons why Razem is so interesting on the Polish left is that they have shown that they are able to present candidates who are able to challenge the old left and also take on right-wing candidates in conservative and also more city-based areas of Poland. And she told us about two candidates who were able to get into parliament by challenging other candidates in front of them on the ballot.
So the thing is, if you have a Lewica ballot, and you have, of course, the order, and like the statistical or the habit of the voters to always pick the first name, right? And usually the people that are very well known, like Adrian Zandberg, are placed in the pole position, right? And they usually have almost like a surefire. There's almost a sure 100% certainty that they will, if the whole list passes the bar of the 5% or 8%, depending in the region that people vote in the constituency, then usually it's the people in the pole position that get the mandate. But if a person that is placed on the second or the third position simply gets more votes than the person in the first position, this person is entering the parliament. So there is no discussion, right? So usually it happens when the person in the pole position gets jumped. Let's call it this way. We call it przeskoczyć, which is this person gets jumped. Usually it's a weaker candidate than thought. So sometimes it's a very well known established person, but for some reason maybe the campaign is weak, or so there's usually a factor like that. And then there is a very motivated challenger that is running a very good campaign, and it usually then works. So this worked in the most spectacular way in two cases. One was this Joanna Wicha, who won the region around Warsaw. So you have the Warsaw constituency, and you have the donut, as we call it, around Warsaw. And it's a very difficult region, slightly more conservative than the Warsaw city. And Joanna, who won by 60 votes, as I said, she ran really a direct campaign. So she basically traveled the donut several times, and she spoke directly to people at markets, on the street. It was really like a face-to-face campaign a lot. She was also having a very good presence on social media. So she had a young team that was helping her with that, reporting on her activities and the tour that she did on particularly Instagram. But I mean, all of the things, Meta, social media, perhaps slightly less on Twitter, because Twitter is kind of in Poland working as a kind of opinion shaping tool, not really an electoral tool. So I think her campaign was based on these two legs: very good social media presence and direct contact with the voter. So this worked really well, but it should be a campaign that actually suits the candidate. Joanna is a very down-to-earth, direct, incredibly friendly person who basically comes across best when she has a direct contact with the people. The other spectacular campaign where the first candidate from Nowa Lewica was jumped by a Razem candidate by I think something like 20,000 votes, which is really quite a lot. Again, in a rather conservative city. Kraków is much more conservative than Warsaw. That was really, truly innovative campaign. But again, the candidate, Daria Gosek-Popiołek, who also was an MP for the first time in the previous term, so she had some recognizability. She had a young team that was supporting her, and also she was supporting the younger women that were in her running her campaign, but also being candidates on the same ballot. So it was the message was women that are supporting each other. So it wasn't like this, she's the leader and the rest is just working for her. No, the message was also there were 3 female candidates, and she is like the one that is highly placed, and they work together, but there is not rather cooperation than competition. And they also had really kind of an atypical, innovative campaign in Kraków for Daria. So they had these types of events, electoral events that were perhaps not so obvious and new for people, and engaging the electorate. So there was some speed dating, there was a musical evening, there was a picnic, there was even some storytelling, and apart from kind of like, children's reading rather than storytelling. So Daria was really also leading a very, very direct campaign along that, kind of surprising events that the team basically prepared for her. Daria was also running a very direct campaign, talking to people and giving them leaflets and being present everywhere. So this worked really brilliantly. And in general, all the challengers that did not manage to jump anyone or get the mandate actually got a very good result that can be built on, for example, in the municipal elections or the European Parliament elections that are coming very soon next year.
The day we were doing this recording with Zofia, it's been already 8 days past the election. Everything was a bit chaotic, and we wanted to understand what kind of strategies they are discussing inside the party Razem. Of course, it's important to know that all 3 lists of the opposition has managed to get into parliament, so there is a chance of forming a united government. And what was interesting is that Zofia explained why the decision of joining a united coalition is not so easy after all.
Okay, so the negotiations regarding the new government are starting now. There's already, quite a lot of noise being made about in the media about who is going to get which ministry. Most of that is just either wishful thinking or some media speculation, or some leaks that people are trying to kind of shape the discourse for themselves. Because as far as I know, nothing concrete has actually yet been talked about. So there are quite a lot of meetings this week between Tusk, who is the kind of the largest opposition party and who is likely to be prime minister. It's almost kind of 100% sure. Then there's this Trzecia Droga, which got quite a high result, higher than expected, 14%. So they are likely to be a major kind of negotiating force. And then there is our committee, which is this Nowa Lewica committee that Razem run with practically. But our situation is slightly more complicated in the sense that Koalicja Obywatelska, Tusk's Liberal Party, and this agrarian center party have enough votes in the Polish parliament to have a majority, right? So in many ways, they do not really, or for most things that they would like to do in the next term, they do not really need Lewica, which is the biggest drawback. For Razem, it was a very good election, but overall, the Lewica list got a result of 8.7%, which was underwhelming. We were hoping for a two-digit result, 10, 11, 12. But we will definitely enter the negotiations. We are already in negotiation. We want to sit at the table. And what is very important for us, particularly for Razem, we are weighing our options, and this weekend we will see what hopefully see what lies on the table, and we will decide whether we will join the governing majority or go into opposition. There are voices at Razem that actually are very strongly in favor of joining the opposition. There is this climate right now that people want the opposition to be together, to stay together, and for the left and the Razem to join this bloc. This is all on the wings of that feeling that people want to see the political scene to be more compromise prone and friendly. We understand the sentiment, but then on the other hand, if you have a look at the alternative, that the only opposition to this new government is PiS and Konfederacja, this is very difficult. This is very dangerous for Poland, right? So there is this argument, which we will be weighing among ourselves at the National Council this weekend, depending also what we see during the negotiations. What will be better for Poland? What will be better for the left and for the people that supported the left? For us to try and push through the policy points that we really care about, that I will tell you about in a second. So whether it is better for us to push through the policy points by joining the government, where we are not really as needed as we would like to because of the majority things, or is it better for us to push through the policy points by criticizing the government and being in opposition? Right? So it's as usual, Razem is usually, in the worst. It's never easy for us. It's like I have been in the party for 7 years, and we were always somewhere, like in between two forces and trying to do two things at the same time. It's always with a big risk for us, but so far we have not only survived but thrived. So I hope for the best.
Regardless of Razem joining the government, they will be an important actor in Polish politics in the coming term. Of course, the question emerges, what are they going to do with this power? What kind of issues are they going to represent during the next 4 years? We were really curious of Zofia's answer. And of course, listeners, you might expect these policies because these policies are issues that all left-wing political parties should represent once they are in parliament or once they get into government.
So, women's rights, legalization of abortion, at least until the 12th week of gestation, is like the absolute first thing that we would definitely support, and there are no compromises here. We see that some of the more conservative politicians of Trzecia Droga have come out of the woodworks already and are kind of questioning this. But I don't know how much of this is kind of, trying to influence the opinion and using their momentum. But I think the Polish people in this election, and particularly Polish women, have shown what they want in that regard, and they want this ban to stop. They want that abortion is decriminalized. And we just want to have European standards, that is European Union standards regarding abortion. So that's one thing. Another thing, what we run on is housing. So it is very difficult right now for young people to find affordable housing, either rent or buy. And we have a very concrete program, which we have shown, which also by going to Vienna and showing kind of the housing that they had there that was state funded or municipality funded, that works really well and has a kind of a regulating effect on the rent prices in the city. So we have quite a mature and concrete policy here, which we would like to do in the government, which has to do with boosting not the demand but the supply of housing in Poland.
So yeah, this was the interview with Zofia Malisz. We were so glad to understand the campaign and the aftermath of the 2023 election from a political practitioner's perspective. But we were really curious for another perspective as well, because if you are following the news and you are following the commentators on the Polish election, one of the important factors of electoral success was not only party politics and not only the strategies of the opposition, but also the mobilization efforts of the civic society. Of course, Polish society has a great history of civic movements and civic participation. And we wanted to invite people from organization that was in the epicenter of this mobilization effort. So we have two special guests here, Dominika and Wiktoria. Dominika and Wiktoria are from the Polish movement Shoot. I hope I pronounce it right. They will give you the correct pronunciation just right now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dominika. I'm a climate activist, let's say, and a member of the Wschód initiative. And Wschód stands for, in Polish, it means both the sunrise and the east. And for us, it means kind of like the sunrise from Eastern Europe. When we set up Wschód, we wanted this to represent kind of like the change and the movement, that like the new political force that is coming from Eastern Europe, because for so long Eastern Europe has been like branded as this like backwards region in Europe, and that we're like less developed, less XYZ. And so we really wanted to, especially in times of like the Russian invasion of Ukraine and all of those crises, we wanted to really like show that, hey, like in times of those crises, it is from that particular region, from that place that like the hope, the solutions can come from. So that's what Wschód is about. And yeah, and Vicky is a fellow co-founder and activist of Wschód. So I'll hand it over to her.
When we started, the name wasn't there, but we had an idea, and it was in the beginning of the full-scale war of Russian full-scale war in Ukraine. We knew that some changes have to happen, and they, for once, might not come from the West, as we were always told, but from ourselves and from how also we see climate activism and what has to be done with the fight between the normal people, the common people, and fossil fuels atrocities. And I guess what we wanted to do this year was to also finally have some positive change in Poland that might create any space for driving not only positive change in general, but also actually phasing out fossil fuels. And that is something that is possible, is not yet won, but is possible in Poland now after the elections a few days ago.
So it's no coincidence that we invited you to talk about the Polish elections and the general atmosphere of Polish politics after the election, because your movement was really active during the electoral campaign, mobilizing people, especially women, and not only in the capital, but also in the countryside as well. But before going into the details of your voter mobilizing campaign, as you have mentioned, Wschód has ran different awareness campaigns in Poland this year, and these campaigns mostly focused on fossil fuel and climate change. So my question is, like, why did you eventually make the decision that you will be active in the mobilization campaign leading up to this year's election?
Well, I guess it wasn't easy for us to decide that because very often climate movements try to keep us away from like party politics as possible, and for a long time I've shared that view, and I think that I remember when we were talking about it, I was like, should we do that as Wschód? Should like the movement that is stemming from the climate movement be involved that much in fighting against the government and not trying to create any change? but also like kind of growing up under PiS governance. So like they've been in power since 2015. So most of my like conscious life, I'd say, I knew, and I guess we knew that we really need to change this government to create any sort of change. And also we knew that these elections were a very important wave of people finally being able to change something. So, for example, like in 2020, we had the women's strikes that in the law it didn't change anything. But then many of these women who were striking on the streets for 3 months against the absurd abortion law, they went to vote, and they also were an amazing and very important, like crucial part of PiS not being able to create a government now. So I guess we wanted to show that, first of all, we are able to be in solidarity with all of these people. We know all of these crises. The climate crisis is not the only crisis that is stemming from fossil fuels. It's not the only crisis that is turning our lives into something that we would never want it to be. So we knew that this changes is very crucial for us to progress in any way. And that's one thing. And the other thing is that we knew all of the elections happening right now in the EU are kind of very, very important for the climate policies in general. So we need to like stay within the more climate pro majority within the EU, so that the whole climate policies in the world are becoming more and more progressive. And that's what we wanted to do. And we knew, and I think we know even more now, that this win, so the win against PiS is not even the end of the beginning of this fight. And we have many fights to come to actually see the coal phase out, to actually see just transition happen finally in a just way, or many different things that we are about in Wschód.
Mm-hmm. And I would just add to what Vicky mentioned, that we needed the government change in order to have any chance for like progress on all sorts of left-wing or just like crises topics, I would say. And I think a big lesson for us, and a kind of like a big motivation for us, were actually the conclusions from what happened in Hungary before, with the recent elections there.
Yeah.
And what we found out in conversations with different activists and with different experts was that what happened in Hungary was that the opposition, the parties from the opposition united, but there wasn't this kind of like national spirit, this kind of non-partisan mobilization that would create that kind of like social atmosphere of voting for change. And we realized that because we also, as individuals, for instance, we would get like some like questions from different opposition parties if we could run from their lists.
Mm-hmm.
And what we realized is that that's not going to give us a big chance for a change, but we need to be smarter, and we need to actually go after that challenge of creating that non-partisan mobilization around these elections that's going to create the space for those opposition democratic parties to actually be perceived as like what we really need right now. And I think, and once we realized that perhaps we need to kind of like learn the lessons from other places, from other examples that we know of, the next actions became kind of very easy and intuitive. You know, like if we are to create a non-partisan movement and mobilization, we need to know who are we, like who's our audience, what people we need to reach. And that were the undecided voters. Among them, we realized that the women were the most kind of dissatisfied with politics and like demotivated. So we needed to find out like what kind of moves them, how can we reach their hearts through our actions. And so eventually after the 15th, we realized that, okay, like it made perfect sense and it became logical. And so I think now it's a really, for me, it's also super, like it feels like a big blessing and joy to be able to even share those learnings that we've had from Poland, and to let other people know that actually like we can draw good conclusions and we can target the far right, defeat them and have those victories.
Yeah, for me, I think this aspect of mobilizing women in the Polish elections was definitely probably the most inspiring aspect. And I think it was also something that was lacking in the last Hungarian election season, that there was very little messaging being done towards women. So it was amazing to see that in Poland, for example, your organization also made this viral video about women and how they were being fed up with especially right-wing, sexist, misogynistic politicians and the expectations that were being put on women in the household, in their professional lives, domestic work, etc. So I was wondering if there's anything more that you could share about the tools that you used on social media or on your, tour around Poland. Like, how were you able to reach women and how were you able to convince them to get out and vote in the end?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that the work around the elections for us started a long time ago. It wasn't just like the last few weeks that we used to mobilize women and youth, but it was actually, I would say, very concretely at the beginning of the year that we told ourselves, okay, these elections are a milestone. They will probably be a chance for us to shift the political scene completely. And so that needs to be also our very crucial goal that will determine a lot of months of our work this year. And I'm saying this because, and this is again kind of like that conclusion we draw from Brazil, from the movements, the NGOs that were working there to get Bolsonaro out of office, is that they said, if you want to kind of get all the civil society active to mobilize people in different areas, you need to create and you need to align around the common goal, because on a daily basis, everybody is doing stuff around their topics. But if we do not tell each other that creating a shift in power is our biggest goal, if we don't say that to each other, then a lot of resources will be just directed in all sorts of places and it might not give us the effect that we really need. So we stated that to ourselves at the beginning of the year. And then I think what happened was that we used the first half of the year to really firmly establish ourselves on the political scene, actually. We weren't a party, we were a non-partisan movement, but we were, campaigning around specific topics that were being debated in the parliament. After the first big march that Donald Tusk organized, the opposition leader organized, we gathered different key youth leaders, youth activists to state, okay, so our demands are this, and that towards the opposition after that big march. And I think that was really key because, by the time we got to the specific get out to vote mobilization, people perceived Wschód, people perceived us as key political players that were also, present in the media, and that we were a place that people looked towards to kind of make up their minds about all of this election mess that was going on. So that was the first thing. And then in the summer, we decided that, okay, we're kind of putting aside all of the energy, climate related campaigning, and we focus solely on elections and we focus solely on mobilizing. And we did all sorts of crazy things. We went to the biggest music festival in Poland with this big ballot box, and we were telling people to come and vote for the solutions to crises that they want. Or we did this activist camp for people from across Poland to come to brainstorm together and to do actions afterwards together with. We did a silent disco in front of the parliament to say that we want to dance away our anger, and we want to soon at the elections, we want to freshen the parliament and vote for change.
We went to the parliament with 30 other young activists who very often were for the first time ever in the parliament building, so that they could just randomly come politicians and ask them questions about things that matter to them. So we also were trying to show that it's not only about us crazy too, or about our core team, but also it's about just different, very common young people asking what they need, very often not remembering the government before peace. So we were trying to kind of show that, okay, young people are gonna vote in these elections, but under some circumstances, and then we were kind of trying to show off with these circumstances at different moments in the campaigning.
And I think to what Vicky said, we also haven't mentioned that, but one of our key tools throughout the past months were also confronting politicians. Our activists would pop up at their election rallies or at some press conferences with the politicians, both from the government and from the opposition. And so through doing all of these different actions, different events, we would show that like young people care about these elections, because all of the boomers are always saying like, oh yeah, you don't care. So we were like, we care, and we're very actively involved in like shaking up that political scene. And then the kind of the final piece of our actions was that that video that we created with some amazing film crew that showcased different struggles of women and young women in Poland, with like the comments and like the insults of politicians kind of playing in the background. So,
and I guess that is the most crucial part when it comes to the video itself. That's why it reached different women, because it was portraying very, very different crises that women struggle with. So it wasn't only about young people, you know, struggling with education, or only about abortion, which were two very used topics by different NGOs in the campaign. But we're also like trying to show inflation as something that also is like a sharing struggle for many people, and the most heartbreaking messages that we were receiving from different people were from these women who like very visibly were for the first time kind of trying to speak up. So we were saying we've been silent already, and actually we saw different women getting kind of angry and trying to voice their needs for very often for the first time in their lives. And I guess also like to me it was very touching where our moms came to our press conference, and that was like, for me, was the first time when my mom actually felt like she is kind of welcome to some activist space, and that was very, very like inspiring to see that really normal women in their 50s and their 40s can also be together in this fight with us.
So we launched that video. Vicky mentioned the press conference. There was also like posters and stickers that people were like ordering from us or downloading and putting up in their block of flats, in their schools, workplaces, because they felt like they can join that campaign and create it together. And so the last 2 weeks ahead of the elections were just the video going viral, different influencers, artists, moms, sisters, friends, random people sharing that video, to a point where it reached like 10 million people on Instagram just through our account, and then many more million people through the media that took up that video like crazy, and through like other platforms that were,
and then next millions from like social media ads that we were also trying to target to specific audiences, so that women from the rural areas see that, so that women from the like the voting areas that were undecided still would see that, and mainly they would be encouraged to vote in next days.
You've been not only busy popularizing the video that you have created in the last 2 weeks before the election, but you hit the road. And in that sense, there is some similarity between Partizan and Shoot, actually, because they had a road trip as well before the Hungarian elections. And yeah, I'm really curious about your experiences during the road trip, because you've been going to a lot of places in rural Poland as well. And I'm really interested what kind of interactions you had with people, and maybe do you have a short story that you could share with us?
There were many stories that I feel like are still kind of like good to share, or to me are very inspiring, because like all of these women that we were meeting were very much inspiring and showing me a different angle of how our work is actually staying within the people. Like, to me, one of the most exciting moments were at the very beginning when we were in Gniezno, in a very small, not very small, but in a small city in eastern Greater Poland. It's kind of a rural area, but also the city was the first Polish capital thousands years ago. And we saw then like some of the journalists from the city working for the local newspaper being very, very inspired by what we're doing. And also they were saying a lot of things, how they want to support, and they were kind of like saying things that would show that they are in this together with us. So they wouldn't say that we want to do it for you or things like that, but they were saying that it's our common fight kind of. And they were saying a lot of things about sharing the video and making it viral and blah blah blah. And it was just one day after we uploaded that, and after we started like the whole tour. So that was very, very touching. Then we were in Konin, another city very similar to Gniezno. And one of the very cute moments were when we were in the lift with Dominika, And one of the workers from the hotel, there were two women, and they asked if Dominika is Dominika because they saw her in the TV, and they started talking like about the elections and if they're coming and who are they gonna vote for and why are they gonna vote. And they were saying, like, I remember this woman said something like, it doesn't matter what she thinks and it doesn't matter how she feels in this country because she's just a cleaning lady and it just doesn't matter. And to me, it was very humbling to see how in that conversation she felt like maybe this voice actually matters. And I guess these small changes that happen in particular lives are also very important because this is something that really drive people to change things and really make them believe that it is important how you feel in your country, and it is important that there are some ways to change that. So I even want to cry now when I think about it and when I think about her. And it was very cute, and she took our stickers, and it was just like a very normal person in their, I guess, 50s who we were talking to, and that was very cute. It was so cool to also just be on that trip, like in less than 2 weeks, to just see Poland how it is, to also talk with people who were critical of what we do, to go to the local markets and talk why people want to vote or who are they voting for or if they have ever voted. And I guess it was cool, not in a scientific way, but in like a very normal way, just to see and be with your country, be with your people, with your society. We very often in our movement, we say that we are doing everything we can to fight for justice for our people. And I very often struggle with defining who actually is our people. And I guess it's very important to remember that and to kind of stay in touch with these people, to talk with them, to go outside of Warsaw or other big city and talk about the local problems. And then it happens that it's not only the abortion education. There are so many different issues that women struggle with in this country that very often I cannot even imagine. And it was very, very humbling experience for me to do that.
Another thing that to me was so surprising is that we were very spontaneous on that trip. And honestly, we didn't have any detailed plan for where we would go at the beginning of that trip. So it was kind of like, I think looking back, too crazy. But what we did is that when we were planning that, okay, the next day we're going to be in the Silesia region in the south, or we will be in this town or so, we set up those Facebook events under the title, We Have Been Silent Already. And we would invite like local NGOs and just like women from the area. And before we would start that event, before heading to the particular town or city, I would be like, no one's going to come. It will be super cringe. And we're going to be just there alone with some like our placards. And then to me, it was just mind blowing how in each of the town and each of the city that we would go to and organize those actions, there would be so many women that would come that would be like so hyped to take our posters, to speak up.
Or they would already come with the posters because they printed it themselves, which was very cute.
Exactly. So they would come, and because we would invite press to that, they would give interviews to the local press. They would really speak up and like have a platform to talk about elections and to talk about what frustrates them. And especially at the very end of our tour before heading back to Warsaw, we did this kind of little rally in Koszalin, which is a city in the north of Poland where a lot of the voters were swinging and where there was a big potential to mobilize more support for the opposition. Yeah. And I remember we were at like this central square in Koszalin, and I was like so convinced no one's gonna come because like we did it super last minute. We were so exhausted after the like 2 weeks of just going from place to place, and then there was those like few groups of women that came with their own like painted banners, and they would be like so thrilled, and they would chant their own things and scream and like take millions of pictures, and
they would have their leader also speaking up, like also like a woman in her 50s probably, who was like also talking how they organize themselves in the city and how very often they struggle with, city council and like all of sorts of different issues that I would never think that, such issues would bring these women to such rally, or would bring these women to like supporting what we do. And I guess it was also like, again, like a very humbling experience to see these people fighting for themselves, for their daughters, for their sisters, they would also come very often in like a group of families kind of. So that was very cute. But also, I guess I say that very rarely, but men who were coming to the rallies and knew that their place is not kind of with us in the rally itself when talking to the media, for example, but is behind the cameras. That was also very cute too. So that like in the last week before the elections, we saw Polish guys, you know, like very normal dads and uncles kind of knowing, okay, now it's not our time, and we will just keep where we are.
Yeah. And I think, and especially at the last action, I felt like, you know, we've tried so many things and we really got ourselves together and we got organized and we created that big community that is not going to be silent and passive no matter the election results. And that gave me a lot of peace. And ahead of the 15th of October, I was like, no matter what happens, no matter if we managed to mobilize enough of people for that change to happen, like, it will be just fine. We have our people. They are there. They are resisting no matter how hard the conditions are. And so that was a big hope at the end after all of those crazy months, that I was like, okay, let's now go vote and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's so amazing to hear you guys. It really is like so inspiring, and also your energy is so high still. Like after the election, which is just, you know, like it's great to see and hear, and also I think like gives us a lot of hope. You know, like I do think that the situation in Hungary is somewhat more difficult, but you know, like just seeing you guys and having an Eastern European example of how this can be done is really amazing. And yeah, I think our final question is probably about your plans for the future. Like I can see that you are very dedicated and motivated, and I was just wondering like what your expectations are for this coming period. Probably you will have some differences with the new center liberal government as well. Poland is definitely in the focus of a lot of geopolitical stuff and, you know, new energy terminals and stuff coming from America. You know, the war is still going on. So I was just wondering, if you have any ideas about what to turn to or stuff for the future.
Dominika is waiting for the seat in the climate ministry. For sure.
That's not true. That's not true.
No, I'm kidding.
Funny, haha. No, but to be honest, I think
it's like a rolling joke. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a rolling joke that we are waiting for our seat. You know, like no, that's not true. We don't.
Yeah, finance
we know our
as well.
Non-partisan movement.
We are staying within our place. But to be honest, I think we all realize and we are aware that these elections and the 15th of October was just the beginning of the fight for a just, fair and safe Poland. And now, you know, I'm so grateful that I feel like some new doors are opening for us and that there is a space for public debate about, you know, just green transition of our economy. There is a space for pushing specific policies and bills that secure women's rights, that fight cost of living crisis, that will answer the climate catastrophe and all of that. Before the 15th, I was really scared that, you know, the Law and Justice will have another term of governing and that the progress on any kind of topic will not be there. Like it will just be impossible to do anything with them. And so now I feel like those doors are opening, and I think we are fully ready to fight for the concrete stuff that we want, that we dream of, that we were speaking up about for so long. The democratic opposition, or what will now be the new governing coalition, is far from perfect and is far from answering our demands. But I think what is ahead of us are some really exciting months of us campaigning actually, like in a way, against them. Like we will be fighting them. We will be fighting for them to finally start working and providing us like the state action that we need. But I think the second thing is that I would really love for what happened in Poland to be kind of like a milestone for our next victories on an international level. The European elections are coming up, and I'm sure that like we can definitely use a lot of the learnings from this election work in fighting the far right in different places across Europe, in securing a just and green majority in the next European Parliament. We want to use this as an example and to use this as a beginning of a real wave of change across the continent. And I think to finish off, at least on my side, on Sunday late evening, when the election results were about to be published, I made a recording of our reaction and my reaction to hearing the results on my phone. I got super emotional and I cried, and like it was like a burst of just joy and shock and everything at once. And I published it on my social media because it was like, I just want to share this moment because it's so precious. And one of the first people that texted me was actually my friend from Hungary, an activist, Lily. And that friend texted me saying, I hope one day I can cry like this in Hungary. And when I saw this, I was lost for words, because I was like, damn, I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. And we will make sure it happens together. So yeah, that was a reminder that what happened in Poland is something that so many people are still dreaming of in their places. I hope and I will do, and we will do everything we can to really make sure this is a growing force across different countries.
Yeah, I'm scared to talk because I'm scared I'm gonna cry, because I think this story and the Lily's reaction, it's really heartbreaking to know that there are so many people who are in a way worse position than we are now, but also it's so scary to think that we would be much closer to where Hungary is now if the results were different. And yeah, I'm I really hope the new government will use the opportunity and the very low bar to make people in Poland feel that things can be different, and they will not use so many broken institutions, for example, to just make money out of it and everything, and to just stay within the power. So I really hope that they will use that opportunity, but I also know, and I think it's a huge blessing to know that we've created together, all together, a huge crowd of people who will be watching them, and a very, very kind of motivated crew that are going to work even harder to create the real changes here when it comes to new terminals, as you said, when it comes to finally phasing out coal, when it comes to creating a just transition for people working for example, in the mining sector of economy, and more and more and more. To me, what is very inspiring in this story is to see how often we've heard from our friends that they are staying in Poland because they finally see any kind of sunrise of hope, and who is that? And this is the reason why I'm staying in this country. I guess this is the reason why Domi is staying here, but also many our friends from Wschód who are seeing that this country can finally be a cool country to live, and it can be just the country that we deserve. We don't need anything more. It's just a country that many of us deserve. And I think that's a very, very hopeful kind of finish for this campaign, to know that a lot of work is yet to come, but also we're in this together in a way.
So as you might have been able to hear, this was a very emotional discussion for David and I. We were very much inspired by the work that Dominika and Wiktoria did in the period leading up to the Polish elections. And of course, it says a lot about our hopes for achieving something similar in Hungary sometime in our lives, hopefully. And I was just wondering, David, what was maybe the key takeaways for you thinking through the Polish electoral success of the opposition?
Before my two takeaways, I wanted to just comment as well that meanwhile, Dominika and Wiktoria were talking about their work and their experiences during the campaign. I couldn't stop thinking about that this is the future we couldn't have because of the failure of last year's electoral campaign in Hungary. But also, agreeing with you, this can be the future we will have. But I think two important takeaways for Hungarian oppositional parties is that, of course, oppositional practitioners and oppositional party members and party leaders have to understand the strategy behind the successful electoral campaign of the oppositional parties. Not only what kind of strategies they used in terms of lists, but also what kind of messaging and what kind of electoral mobilization tactics they used during the campaign. And there is a message here for the civic society as well, I think, that we shouldn't and cannot ignore. And of course, there is a lesson to be learned for Hungarian civic organizations as well, which we shouldn't and mustn't ignore. And that lesson is that even if you are a civic organization, even if you are a non-political organization, you have to care about elections, because the outcome of the elections will determine whether you can care and you can do your single issue stuff, organizing and mobilizing between elections, or you cannot. And that is what Polish civic organizations has realized. And I know that Polish civic society has a long history in mobilizing and organizing masses of people. But I think in order to keep the good work what a lot of Hungarian civic organizations are doing, they need to understand that politics is not a messy thing, but politics is about representation and deciding what kind of country we want to live in for the next 4 years.
Yeah, so if you are a Hungarian listener, thank you so much. Köszönjük, hogy velünk tartottál.
Köszi.
And if you are an international listener, maybe from Poland or elsewhere in Eastern Europe, we would very much would like to hear from you. Please find our contact details in the description below. We would love to hear from your experiences and love to hear more about who you are if you found this episode somehow. So my name is Nora.
And my name is David.
And this was Belépési küszöb. Thank you so much for listening to us.
Having our fingers crossed for Hungary.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you
guys.